Alright, welcome back. We're going to look at data entry part 3 now, and in this section what I've done is to add a little bit of calculations for us, some simple math, and in my little pretend lawnmower shop program you'll notice that what I have is a place for me to type in an address, or I'm sorry, a customer, and then I can type in an item that they want to buy. Let's just say that Nancy bought a battery, and also let's just say it was $29.95. Now when I hit checkout, you'll notice that in this label, and these are label controls, I've computed the tax on $29.95 and put the tax down here, and then in this label I've gone ahead and added up the price and the tax and put the total that she owes me right there. If you click clear, it does what you would expect. It clears all the text boxes and puts the cursor back up here. And just to add a little something to the form, I put what's called a picture box control right here, and I added a little image of lawnmower races that I found. It's not a movie, it's not animated or anything, but it just added something to kind of brighten up the form. So I just thought I'd show you how to use a picture box control too. Okay, so let's take a look at the code and see how this little puppy works. Let me show you, first of all, in Solution Explorer, I added a folder here for my little lawnmower picture. It's called Mower Races, JPEG. If you ever want to add a folder like this, and I think it's a good idea, keep all your images, all your special files in a separate folder, just do this. Go up to the name of your project and right click and just say add, and then you can just say new folder, and then you can call it whatever you want. That's all I did. And then I went and got this picture somewhere, and I added it to this folder. You can go right click on it and say add, and you can say existing item, and then you can browse all over your computer, and find whatever picture you want and drag it in there. Let me find some picture for you. Here's a picture. This was maybe a picture of farm animals or something. I don't know what I have in here. I don't know what it is. Let me see. Here we have this little thing. So I could add this, and if I were to open it up for you, it would just show you that that's the mower races, and here's the little thing I just drug in. Okay, a little thing of an irrigation game. So you can just put anything you want in there. If you don't want it anymore, you just simply say delete and say yes, I want to get rid of it. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the code then and see how I put this little thing together. I'm going to close this again as usual, and if you'll notice at the top I tried to put some notes up here as to what I did. One of the things that you're going to have to remember is when you design this stuff in Visual Basic, a lot of what you set are in the property windows, and so when a program doesn't work, don't forget that maybe it's a property over here that's messed up and not necessarily something that you did. For example, in these labels, this one's called LBL tax, see right here, and this one's called LBL BAL due, for the balance due. In both of these, I aligned the text, see the text align property? I aligned it so that the text would be in the middle of the label and to the right. This thing is kind of funny. This is a new deal. If I click this, it puts the text at the very bottom of my label, right down here. If I choose this in the center one, it'll put it in the center and also vertically centered in the label. You can really fine-tune this. In this particular case, I wanted it to the right, and I just set it into the middle of the label. Okay, so I want to make sure that you saw how I did that. And let's see what else I did here. Oh, let's look at the picture while I've got it on the form here. You add a picture box from the toolbox, just like you would anything else. Here's one. You drag it over on the picture, on the form rather, and then you'll notice up here in 05, most of these controls have something called smart tags. See this right here? If you click on that, depending on what kind of control, it allows you to do some things, and it just saves some time of going into the actual properties. So in this case, it says choose the image. And what I did was I said it's a local resource. Now that means it's part of my project or it's on my computer. Say import, and then I searched for it, and I'm not going to waste your time showing you, but you just search for it and add it, and then it pops it in here. The other thing that you can do is you can tell it how you want the image to look. You can center it like I did, you can auto size it, you can make it stretch, you can zoom, you can do all kinds of things. So you can do that right from the new picture box control that has this little smart tag. Okay? So let's go in and look at my code and see what's happening here. Close this so you can see. I like doing that so you have some room, okay? Because these lines are so big now on these event handlers that you need the whole screen. Let's go down to the easy stuff first. The very last thing is when they want to quit the program, btn click event. I use me.close, and remember me refers to the form itself. Close is a method or an action that tells the form, hey, go close yourself. Now up here, I've just added some things because I have a few more controls than what we had in parts 1 and 2, but basically I'm doing the same thing we've done in part 1 and 2. I'm clearing a text box for the customer's name using the clear method. I'm clearing the item that they type in this case, remember I typed in battery. So we're going to clear that one. We're going to clear the text box that holds the price that I called TXT price. And finally we're going to clear the label that I call LBL tax and the LBL BAL due for balance due. We're going to clear both of those using the double quotes. And then finally we're going to set the focus or set the cursor back to the customer text box that I call TXT customer. And again, I wanted you to be able to appreciate the fact that you have got to name your text boxes and labels and everything correctly and so that they make sense to you, because when you're in code like this, you have to know which items you're working with. If you just called it text box 1, text box 2, text box 3, we'd have a hard time knowing exactly what you're working on. Now let's go up to the last little section here, and this happens to be for the button that I call BTN checkout. See this here? Now the text property of this button is, you can see down here, checkout. That's what it says. But the actual name of it is BTN checkout, and that's how we refer to it in our code. So when they click on that, Visual Basic has a click event handler here for me. And remember how I made it? Just double click on the button the very first time. A couple other ways to do it that I'll show you along the way. And here's what I had it do. What I wanted to do is to take what's in the TXT price, the price that I put in, $29.95 or whatever it was, and I want to multiply it. And in Visual Basic we use an asterisk. Okay, use a star, so it's a shift 8. Don't put an X. I want to take what's ever in that text box and I want to multiply it times 8%. Okay, there's 0.08. That's how you have to write it. And then once I've done that multiplication, I want to format it as a number and put it into this label. Now, a couple things I want to tell you. Format number, it's all one word, is something we call a Visual Basic built-in function. Now there's lots of functions. There are functions to convert things to currency, convert things to dates, to times, convert things to numbers, and so forth. There's just tons of them. So format number is an actual word that belongs to the Visual Basic language. I'm surprised it's not coming up in blue like these other ones are, which I'll explain in a minute, but it doesn't. So format number is not something I made up. It's something part of VB. And when you want to use a function like this, you type its name and then you use parentheses to tell it what you want it to work on. In other words, I want it to format the product of whatever's in here multiplied times this. Okay? And when you use format number like this, it automatically will put the answer in 2 decimal places. And that's what I wanted, because I want it to look like something you see in a cash register. Okay? Once it does all this, once it multiplies these two things, it formats it as a number, it takes the result and puts it into my label that I call LBL tax. Now I also want to show how much they owe me at my store. So I've already computed the tax, and so since it's already computed, I'm going to use it again. But I want to show you something new. When you are adding things together, when you're multiplying things together, most of the time what you want to do, even though I didn't do it right here, is you want to make sure Visual Basic understands your intentions. Visual Basic's been very forgiving over the years, and it tries to do what you're thinking, or what it thinks you're thinking. But in this particular case, here's what I want to do. I want to tell it to take whatever in this label tax that I just computed. Okay? Now, take a note. You got to do this line first, and then this line. If I reverse these, it's not going to work. I've computed my tax, and I've put it in the label. Correct? Now, I want to take what's ever in that label, and I want to add it to what's ever in the text box for the price, and then we're going to put the whole total in my little label called LBL balance due, so they can see how much they owe me. But here's the new thing I want to introduce to you. Before I add these up, what I want to do is I want to tell Visual Basic, make sure that you treat whatever's in this tax text label, make sure you treat it as money. Now, in Visual Basic 05, we don't have a currency conversion like we used to have in regular VB. But they do have something called CDEC, and I put it over here for you. It means convert to decimal. Now, since I'm using money, you know that I've told you in class, you have three options. You can use decimals, you can use single precision numbers, and you can use double precision numbers. But what we're going to use here is I'm going to say convert what's ever in this label to a decimal, convert whatever is in this text box, the price, to a decimal, and once they're converted to decimals, add them up. Now what that means is the computer was not going to make any assumptions, not going to make any errors. It knows to treat both of these things as decimals, which we view as money, and after it adds them up, it's just going to simply put them over here in this text box. Now I'm going to show you in other lessons how to do this even more professionally, but this is just going to get us started with learning how to convert some things, how to add some things, and to do some simple arithmetic. Okay? Now, if you're not sure about this, you need to ask some questions about it and practice this. Again, CDEC is a built-in VB function, and it takes what's ever in the parentheses after it and converts it to a decimal. So if you're using tax, if you're using money, and you want to have dollars and cents, you got to use a decimal type number. You can't use an integer. An integer is just a whole number without a decimal. And so you've got to use a decimal type to as one of your options. There are three options, but you can use a decimal type to convert your data so that Visual Basic adds them up correctly. That's the whole point of doing this, so we don't have any errors. All right?